The Ledger of Lost Dreams. Chapter 1. The Dust-Covered Relic. October 2025. The crisp Seattle air, usually invigorating, felt merely cold as I stood in my vast, echoing attic. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight piercing through the high windows, illuminating the forgotten relics of a life carefully constructed. I am Lisa, 47 years old. For 20 years, I've been a financial analyst at a colossal tech firm in Seattle. My days a blur of spreadsheets, quarterly reports, and endless corporate meetings. My husband, Steve, a kind man with an unwavering belief in practicality, and I live in a beautiful, sprawling house in a leafy suburb. Our 2 children, now adults, had recently flown the nest, leaving behind a silence that felt less like peace and more like an ominous void. By all outward appearances, my life was the quintessential American dream. Success, stability, a spacious home, the right cars. Yet, beneath the polished surface, a profound, inexplicable emptiness gnawed at me. I was tired, bone-deep tired, not from work, but from the endless charade of being someone I wasn't. The numbers, once a challenging puzzle, now felt meaningless. The corporate jargon, once a mark of proficiency, now sounded like a foreign language. I felt disconnected, adrift, a ghost in my own perfectly curated life. We were planning a minor renovation, a project to fill the echoing silence of our empty nest. The attic, a repository of forgotten memories, needed clearing. I'd spent days up here, sifting through old tax documents, holiday decorations, and discarded toys, each item a whisper of a past I barely recognized. Then, tucked away in a dark corner, beneath a pile of faded tarps, my fingers brushed against something hard, yet soft with age. A small, unassuming box. Inside, amidst yellowed report cards and a few dried corsages, lay a single tattered notebook. A school notebook. My high school English journal. 11th grade. My breath hitched. My hands, usually precise, fumbled as I picked it up. The cover, once a vibrant blue, was faded, smudged with dust. My name, Lisa Miller, was scrawled in neat, youthful handwriting across the front. A relic from a time before the numbers consumed me, before the practicality set in. I sat down on a dusty trunk. The thin, cool air of the attic, a stark contrast to the sudden rush of heat in my cheeks. I opened the journal. The pages, brittle with time, were filled with my adolescent script. Not equations, not market analyses, but words, my words, poetry, awkward, earnest verses about rain and longing and the vastness of the ocean. Short stories, clumsy yet heartfelt, about runaway girls and talking animals. And then the vivid, painfully detailed descriptions of my dreams, my true dreams. I want to be a writer, one entry declared, bold and underlined, almost leaping off the page. Live in a tiny cottage by the sea, waves crashing just outside my window. Write novels that make people feel something. Travel the world, not on business trips, but to find stories, to truly see life. Below it, in elegant red ink, was a note from my beloved English teacher, Mrs. Davis. Lisa, your talent is immense. Never lose this voice. It is truly yours. Chase these dreams with everything you have. The world needs your stories. Another entry detailed my ideal life. A worn wooden desk overlooking a tumultuous ocean, stacks of books, the smell of old paper and salt. A simple life, rich with creation, not acquisition. a life utterly devoid of balance sheets and corporate ladders. As I read, a profound aching realization washed over me, a physical pain in my chest, a burning behind my eyes. This was me, the real me. The one I had forgotten, the one I had buried under layers of expectation and societal definitions of success. I had chased the wrong dream. I had built a life that looked perfect on paper, but was hollow at its core. I was living a life that wasn't mine, a life that had been dictated by external pressures, by a subconscious desire for approval, by a naive belief that stability equaled happiness. The dust-covered notebook was more than just a relic. It was a mirror, reflecting back the vibrant, hopeful girl I once was and the muted, lost woman I had become. The realization was a devastating yet strangely liberating truth. Chapter 2: The Echoes of a Different Path. The attic, once a storage space, transformed into a personal archaeological site. I spent hours up there, day after day, poring over the dusty relics of my past. The English journal became my constant companion. I reread every poem, every short story, every fervent declaration of intent. My younger self's voice, so clear and passionate, echoed through the quiet of the house, a painful counterpoint to the drone of my current corporate existence. How had I strayed so far? The answer, I realized, was a slow, insidious erosion of self. After high school, the pressure began. My parents, loving but pragmatic, steered me towards a marketable degree. "Liberal arts are for hobbies, Lisa," my father had declared, "not for a career. You're so good with numbers, so logical. Finance is stable, secure." My mother, always worried about future security, echoed his sentiments. I absorbed their anxieties, their fears of instability, and transformed them into my own. In college, I majored in business administration. I met Steve. He was charming, ambitious, and utterly captivated by the idea of a successful future. Big house, nice cars, climbing the corporate ladder. He admired my intelligence and drive in the business world, never truly understanding the quiet, creative spark that still flickered within me. My dreams of writing, of a cottage by the sea, seemed frivolous, naive. I pushed them down, convinced they were childish fantasies. Practicality became my mantra. Financial stability, my god. My career trajectory was seamless. Promotions, raises, accolades. On paper, I was thriving, but the emptiness grew, a silent void that no amount of material comfort could fill. I was a well-oiled machine, performing my functions flawlessly, but the soul that once pulsed with stories and dreams had gone dormant. I tried to talk to Steve about it. One evening, after a particularly draining day of meetings, I brought up the journal. "Steve," I began, holding the worn notebook, "I found this. It's from high school. I used to write poetry, stories. I wanted to be a writer." He looked up from his iPad, a polite, slightly puzzled expression on his face. "Oh, that's nice, honey. You were always good at English, I remember, but you're so much better with numbers. Look at everything we've built. This house, the cars, the kids' college funds are all set. We have everything we need. Why would you want to change that?" His reaction was exactly what I expected, and exactly what I dreaded. A complete lack of understanding. A reinforcing of the very cage I had built around myself. His words, meant to be reassuring, felt like a heavy blanket, smothering the faint spark of recognition the journal had ignited. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a golden cage with no one to truly see the bars. The emptiness deepened, now tinged with a bitter, simmering anger. Anger at myself for betraying my own heart. Anger at my parents for their well-meaning but ultimately misguided advice. Anger at Steve for his inability to see beyond the surface, to recognize the profound unhappiness brewing beneath my calm exterior. Then a name surfaced from the depths of my memory. Chloe, my high school friend. We had bonded over shared notebooks filled with fantastical worlds, whispered dreams of escaping suburbia, of living lives steeped in art and stories. After college, we had drifted apart, our paths diverging as mine turned towards the corporate world, and hers, I vaguely remembered, towards something more bohemian. A desperate hope flickered within me. I pulled out my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Social media, Google. I typed in Chloe Miller, her maiden name, and artist. And there she was, Chloe Evans, a thriving artist based in Sarasota, Florida. Her online portfolio was a riot of vibrant colors and bold strokes, her paintings brimming with the very passion and creativity that had been systematically drained from my own life. Her biography spoke of years of struggle, of living hand to mouth, but also of profound joy and fulfillment. She had done it. She had followed the path we had dreamed of together. Seeing Chloe's success, her apparent happiness, was a painful mirror. It showed me what I had sacrificed, what I had allowed myself to lose. But it also offered a glimmer of possibility. If she could do it, if she could cling to her true dreams and make them a reality, could I? Could I, Lisa Harper, the successful financial analyst, find a way back to the passionate, artistic Lisa Miller who had once filled a dusty notebook with her wildest aspirations? The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. I knew with a sudden, overwhelming certainty that I had to try. The path to my true self, I realized, might begin with a conversation, a hesitant reconnection with a forgotten friend, and a profound leap of faith into the unknown. Chapter 3. Reconnecting Threads. The old English journal lay open on my nightstand, a constant, silent reproach. Or perhaps a constant, silent invitation. Every morning, before the fluorescent glow of my office, before the drone of the market reports, I would read a page, a paragraph, my own words, a lifeline to a self I barely recognized. I decided to start small, a tentative step back into the world I had abandoned. I bought a fresh, online notebook and a set of good pens. Late at night, after Steve was asleep, I would sit at the kitchen table, the only sound the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and try to write. Just a few lines, a description of the rain outside, a memory of a childhood summer. It was clumsy, awkward. My analytical brain, trained for precision and logic, resisted the fluidity of creative expression. But each word, however imperfect, brought a small, quiet spark of joy, a tiny flicker of the fire that had once burned so brightly within me. Then, I reached out to Chloe. It took me days to compose the email. What do you say to a friend you haven't spoken to in 25 years? A friend who pursued the very dreams you abandoned. Dear Chloe, I wrote, my fingers hesitant on the keyboard. This is Lisa Miller, now Lisa Harper. We were friends in high school in Redmond. I hope you remember me. I found my old English journal the other day, and it brought back so many memories of our shared dreams. I saw your amazing art online. You truly followed your passion. I'd love to catch up. If you're open to it, I pressed send, my heart pounding. A few days later, a reply. Chloe. Her email was warm, enthusiastic. Lisa, of course I remember you. I've wondered about you often. Your writing was always incredible. I'd love to talk. I'm in Sarasota, but we could do a video call." The video call with Chloe was a revelation. Her face, framed by vibrant artistic scarves, glowed with an inner light I hadn't seen in myself in years. She had changed, matured, but the passionate, free spirit I remembered was still very much alive. We spoke for hours, laughing about old teachers, reminiscing about shared adventures. Then, hesitantly, I told her about the journal, about the emptiness, about the dawning realization that I had taken a wrong turn somewhere along the way. Chloe listened intently, her expression empathetic. "Oh, Lisa," she said softly, "I know that feeling, the pull of practicality, the fear of not being successful. I almost gave up so many times. It wasn't easy. There were years I barely made rent, years I doubted everything. But something inside me just wouldn't let me stop." That voice, that need to create, it was stronger than the fear. She shared stories of her struggles, her triumphs, the profound satisfaction she found in her art, even when it didn't pay the bills. Her honesty was liberating. "It's never too late, you know," she said, her eyes shining. "That voice inside you, Lisa, it's still there. You just need to listen to it again." Her words resonated deep within me, a profound validation. Inspired, I began to delve deeper into the attic box. Tucked into the back of the English journal, I found a small stack of faded envelopes. Letters. From Mrs. Davis. My heart swelled. She had passed away years ago. A quiet mention in the local newspaper obituary. I opened the first letter. It was from the summer after 11th grade. "My dearest Lisa," her elegant script read, "I truly believe you have a gift. Please, promise me you will never lose your passion for words. The world will try to pull you in practical directions. We'll tell you that stability is paramount. But true stability comes from within, from being true to yourself. Find the courage to follow your own path, even if it's the road less traveled. Never forget the voice of your heart." Tears streamed down my face. Her words, uttered decades ago, felt like a direct message from the universe. A gentle, loving reprimand for a promise unkept. A powerful urging to course correct. The next few days at work were excruciating. The numbers blurred. The meetings felt like a foreign language. I stared at my computer screen, seeing not spreadsheets, but the vast expanse of the ocean, the image of a small cottage, a worn wooden desk. My heart hammered with a new, insistent rhythm. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't pretend. The hollow ache had become a roaring emptiness. One Tuesday morning, I walked into my boss's office. "I'm resigning," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. His jaw dropped. "Lisa, are you serious? But why? You're on track for that promotion. This is a dream job." "It's not my dream," I said, the words feeling like a profound truth, liberating and terrifying all at once. "Not anymore." Steve's reaction was exactly what I had anticipated. Shock, disbelief, and then a torrent of bewildered anger. "Are you insane, Lisa? You're giving up a 6-figure salary? Our financial security? What about the mortgage, the retirement fund? What about us?" His voice was laced with panic, with genuine fear. "What about me, Steve?" I countered, my own voice rising. "What about the fact that I'm dying inside, that I'm living a life that isn't mine?" He stared at me, his eyes wide with incomprehension. "But we have everything. What more could you possibly want?" That was the moment, the decisive moment. I went to the attic, retrieved the old English journal, and returned to the living room, where Steve sat bewildered and angry. I opened the journal, his words about everything we have still echoing in the air. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time in our marriage, I began to read him my true dreams. The dreams of a girl from Redmond, Washington, who longed for words, for stories, for a life by the sea. The dreams I had buried under a mountain of numbers. And as I read, a profound, terrifying, yet utterly necessary confrontation of our life and my lost self truly began. The moment of truth had arrived. Chapter 4, the unwritten chapter. The words from my old journal hung in the air between us, echoing through the vast, silent living room. Steve listened, his initial anger slowly giving way to a bewildered silence. I read my poems, my short story excerpts, my fervent declarations of wanting to be a writer, to live by the sea, to travel the world for stories, not business. My voice trembled at first, then gained strength, filled with the raw emotion of a soul, finally expressing its deepest desires. When I finished, the silence was heavy. Steve stared at the journal in my hands, then at me. His face a complex mosaic of confusion, concern, and a dawning, painful realization. "Lisa," he finally said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. I had no idea. I thought you were happy. You always seemed so good at your job, so organized, so competent." "Competent, yes," I replied, a bitter edge to my voice, "but not alive, not true to myself." I explained the emptiness, the soul-crushing routine, the feeling of being a cog in a machine that was devouring my spirit. I spoke of the decades of suppressing my creative voice, of choosing what was practical over what was passionate. He ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly lost. "But our life, this house, our future, we planned all of this." "We planned a future, Steve," I countered. "But it wasn't my future, not the one my heart truly yearned for." I explained Mrs. Davis's letters, Chloe's journey, the relentless whisper of my true calling. The argument that followed was long, difficult, and filled with tears, mostly mine, but some of his too. He felt betrayed, insecure. I felt misunderstood, suffocated. He worried about money, about our retirement, about what people would say. I worried about losing myself entirely, about waking up at 80 filled with regret. But amidst the raw emotional chaos, something began to shift. As I spoke of my desperation, my profound unhappiness, he started to truly listen. He saw the tears that flowed freely, not just from anger, but from a deep, aching sorrow. He saw the fire in my eyes, a spark he hadn't seen in years, kindled by the possibility of reclaiming my dreams. "So, what do you want to do?" he asked finally, his voice still uncertain, but tinged with a new, hesitant empathy. "I want to write," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. "And I want to live by the sea, in a small house, like I always dreamed. I want to sell this house, Steve. It's too big, too empty, too full of a life that isn't truly ours anymore." His eyes widened in shock. The house was his pride and joy, a symbol of our success. But he looked around the sprawling, silent rooms, the emptiness echoing my words. He saw the truth of my despair. "I don't know, Lisa," he said, shaking his head slowly. "That's a lot, a huge risk." "Living this life," I countered, "is a bigger risk. The risk of losing myself completely." The next few weeks were a delicate dance of negotiations, fears, and tentative steps forward. Steve, after much agonizing, and perhaps seeing the undeniable fire that had returned to my eyes, finally agreed. It was a leap of faith for both of us. He wouldn't join me immediately. His job was in Seattle, and he needed time to adjust to this seismic shift. But he promised to visit, to support me, to try and understand. It was not a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. A brave, terrifying, wonderful beginning. I put our house on the market. The process was surprisingly liberating. Each box packed, each piece of furniture sold, felt like shedding a layer of a skin that no longer fit. I found a small, charming cottage on the rugged coast of Oregon, just south of Portland. It was exactly as I had dreamed, nestled on a bluff, with crashing waves audible from every room. A small, worn wooden deck overlooking the vast, tumultuous ocean. It was modest, rustic, and utterly perfect. My children, initially bewildered by their mother's sudden, dramatic shift from corporate executive to aspiring writer, were surprisingly supportive. They saw the light return to my eyes, the genuine joy in my voice when I spoke of the cottage and my writing. "Mom," my daughter said, her voice full of affection, "we just want you to be happy, really happy." Moving day was a bittersweet blur. The familiar comforts of the Seattle house, the years of memories, were left behind, exchanged for the bracing, salty air of the Oregon coast. The cottage, sparsely furnished at first, quickly became my sanctuary. My worn wooden desk found its place by the window, overlooking the endless expanse of the Pacific. I began to write. It was hard. Decades of analytical thinking had stiffened my creative muscles. The words didn't flow easily at first. There were days of frustration, of self-doubt. But I persevered. Each morning, I would sit at my desk, the roar of the ocean outside my window, and coax the stories from the depths of my soul. I started a blog, sharing my thoughts, my struggles, my small triumphs. I wrote short stories, then tentatively began a novel. I reconnected with Chloe more deeply. We brainstormed ideas, shared feedback. One day, she proposed a collaboration. I would write a series of short stories about the healing power of nature, and she would create illustrations for them. It was a dream come true, a fusion of our childhood aspirations finally realized. Steve visited regularly. He was still the pragmatic man I married, but something had softened in him. He saw the difference in me, the lightness, the peace. He watched me write, his expression thoughtful, and slowly, he began to understand the profound joy that numbers could never provide. Our relationship, once defined by a shared pursuit of material success, was evolving into something deeper, more honest, built on a newfound respect for each other's authentic selves. I was not rich in monetary terms anymore. My savings were dwindling, but my spirit was soaring. I was living simply but profoundly. The fear of financial insecurity, once my driving force, had lessened. I learned that true wealth was not measured in dollars, but in moments of genuine connection, in the quiet satisfaction of creation, in the profound peace of being true to oneself. The old English journal, once a painful reminder of lost dreams, now sat proudly on my new desk, a compass that had guided me home. It wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a testament to the power of a child's true heart, a heart that, despite decades of neglect, had never truly given up on its deepest desires. I was Lisa, the writer, the woman who had found her way back to herself. And the pages of my life, once filled with numbers, were now teeming with stories waiting to be written. My life was finally, truly my own.